What is going on, guys? Let's get into this topic. We're mainly talking about the GOAT debate, but you know, there's another part to this that I want to bring attention to, and it is the obsession that those that dislike LeBron have. They are obsessed with disliking the guy. I don't know what it is about LeBron James that brings out this obsessive mentality that some people have with just disliking the guy. I've never seen anything like it with any other athlete ever in history. I've seen people dislike certain athletes, dislike certain players, dislike certain teams, but the obsessive nature of it is absolutely ridiculous. There are people who literally have their own platform, their own social media, their own. Sometimes it's almost like a podcast. They drop videos of them discussing, and every video is talking about what they don't like about LeBron over and over and over. And I'm not kidding you. There are people that dedicate themselves to this topic as if disliking LeBron James is that important. How did it get that important to dislike a professional basketball player? How did you guys get to that point? To me, it becomes, it almost, you start walking into lunatic territory when you become that obsessed with disliking a basketball player. There's nothing wrong with being an enthusiastic fan who's very passionate, but the obsessive nature of just disliking the guy is just extremely ridiculous. When you have your own social media account, your own YouTube channel, your own podcast, and that is really your only topic, that is when it becomes lunatic territory. The Skip Bayless thing, that's not the only thing he ever talks about, but he has stepped into lunatic territory with the obsessive nature of it. But anyway, let's get into the debate. I'm going to start by telling you that this debate, to me, it doesn't even exist. It's not real. For me as a sports fan, because I have a lot of questions. One, why are they the only two in the conversation? You gotta justify that to me. I don't really have an answer for that, other than just popularity. That's more of a popularity thing than a greatest of all time, because there's reasons why other players can be in the conversation. There are reasons. Now let's get into all the biased, ridiculous, lunatic stuff that people say. Now, I'm going to go ahead and get into this. I'm just going to go ahead and get this out the way. Me personally, I do not see neither of these guys as the GOAT, because I don't believe in the GOAT. I think it's a false, it's not a real accolade. It's just a fictional, it's just a conversation. It's not even a real thing, to be honest, because there's other people that you could put in this category too. It's not just limited to LeBron and Jordan. That's more of a who's my favorite player or who's more popular. That is what that conversation is. It's not, neither of those two are necessarily officially the greatest, okay? Let me get that out the way. Now let's talk about the biased, ridiculous nature that people get into. Okay, let's go back to 2016 when the Cleveland Cavaliers beat the Warriors. What do you hear people say? Kyrie saved LeBron's legacy. No, he didn't. He didn't save LeBron's legacy. That was his own legacy. That was the Cavaliers. This is a team game. You think these players are out there playing for LeBron? Let's get together and make sure LeBron gets a ring. Kyrie was not there for that. He was playing for his ring and for the team's ring, not LeBron. These players are not playing for LeBron. They're playing for their own legacy and the team's organization. That's who they're playing for. That's who they're fighting for. Now, LeBron led all players in points, assists, and blocks in that series. But it was Kyrie that saved him. According to those, those lunatics that are just obsessed with disliking the guy. It's lunatic territory. Let me explain why. John Paxson hits the game-winning shot that gets them the championship in '93. Nobody ever says he saved Jordan in that game. Steve Kerr hits the game-winning shot against the Utah Jazz. I think it was '96, if I'm not mistaken. Or '97. Nobody ever says that he saved Jordan in that game. Nobody ever says that. It was always Jordan, Jordan, Jordan. Jordan has 6 rings. Jordan's undefeated in the finals. Jordan, Jordan, Jordan. It's all Jordan. There is no John Paxson saved the team by hitting a game-winning shot. Steve Kerr, there's none of that in the conversation. It's just Jordan is 6-0 in the finals. That's it. Because the fans are not really honest. They're biased. And they're saying the conversation should really be more who you love and who you like more and who your favorite player is. It's not the greatest because the biasness is extremely one-sided. It's not completely honest. They're not calling it right down the middle. They only focus on LeBron's flaws and Jordan's greatness. They don't focus on the great things LeBron did. Any loss, any sweeps that the Bulls had when Jordan was there in the first round, none of that stuff counts in the conversation at all. But the San Antonio Spurs sweeping the Cavaliers, despite the fact that LeBron played with a team that was not championship material, there's no way that team is even coming close to the finals. They couldn't even get to the playoffs when LeBron left, let alone the NBA Finals. But you don't hear that in the conversation. It's always LeBron got swept. LeBron got swept by the Spurs. An individual got swept by a team. Well, I would hope that it would be a sweep if it was a team versus a player. They say Jordan doesn't even know what a sweep is. Yes, he does. He's been on the Bulls where they've been swept in the first round. He knows exactly what a sweep is. So stop it. Just because he wasn't swept in the finals, getting swept in the playoffs is worse. In the first round, that's worse. Because you didn't even come close to getting to the finals. Your team got swept in the first round. That is worse. If you get swept in the first round as a team, that is worse than being swept in the finals because it means your team had absolutely no shot at even coming close to getting a ring versus getting swept in the finals. You actually had a team that made it to the finals. So getting swept in the first round is worse. That is left out of the conversation. Nobody wants to talk about that. Why? Because it favors the side that they don't like. And the conversations are biased. They're not honest. Nobody, and the Jordan, that's the advantage Michael Jordan has. His flaws are left out of every conversation. Nobody talks about the 1993 3-point shootout. You know why? Because Michael Jordan had 5 points. That's the lowest in NBA history. Nobody's ever going to bring that up. You think LeBron could do something like that and not be clowned and made fun of? No. Any flaw that LeBron does is all over social media. They say he got beat by Barrera and all this other weird stuff that they say. And the conversations are just lacking honesty. They're just completely biased. Why? Because any downfall that Michael Jordan has shot the Bulls out of so many games. And let's get back into the team conversation with why you cannot give the credit to Jordan for getting these rings, all the credit. You got to give him a lot of the credit, but definitely not all of it. Let's go back to 95 when they got beat by the Orlando Magic. What happened during the offseason? The Chicago Bulls went out and got Dennis Rodman, the #1 rebounder in the NBA. And anybody who doesn't think that rebounding is going to make a difference does not understand the structure of what basketball is. Rebounding is extremely important. And without the rebounding, you're not winning nothing because you put too much pressure on your field goal percentage. And Michael Jordan shot a little under 500 at 49. I think his percentage is a little bit lower than LeBron's. That's a different conversation for a different day. That's another category that nobody wants to talk about. And honestly, it's not by a huge margin. So I'm not even going to make a big deal about it. But yes, LeBron James does have a higher field goal percentage than Michael Jordan. It's by a small margin. So I'm not even going to make a big deal about it. However, I will say that they went out and got Dennis Rodman because they needed to dominate rebounds in order to give guys like Michael Jordan and Scottie Pippen an edge, because your scoring is not going to get you that far ahead if you're not dominating other categories like rebounding and defensive stuff. Dennis Rodman was a defender. They needed that in the paint. because they didn't have any dominance in the paint. They didn't have a center. The first three-peat, they had Horace Grant. He was a high-level rebounder. He was one of the highest rebounders in basketball at that time. That was very instrumental in winning the championship. People don't understand that. They think that they just threw Jordan on the team, and just because of that, they couldn't lose. Let me get into another Jordan factor. Michael Jordan and the Chicago Bulls, along with Scottie Pippen, was not winning a championship until Kareem Abdul-Jabbar and Larry Bird retired. The bad boy Pistons were washed up. A lot of their players had already left. They still had an older Isaiah Thomas. They had an older Magic Johnson, because when Larry Bird was on the Boston Celtics, the Chicago Bulls could never get past the Celtics as long as Larry Bird was playing. When Larry Bird left, the Celtics were no longer able to were not good enough, and that is when the Chicago Bulls, Scottie Pippen and Michael Jordan, were finally able to get championships when Kareem Abdul-Jabbar and Larry Bird was out of the picture, and the Detroit Pistons were out of the picture because, yes, Isaiah Thomas and Joe Dumars were still there, but they were older, and a lot of the other roster had been deteriorated by then, and they were out of the league. Now the Chicago Bulls, Scottie Pippen and Michael Jordan and Phil Jackson, can win championships now because these other great teams are diminished and out of the picture. Nobody wants to talk about this stuff because they paint this picture that Michael Jordan came into the league and just dominated and just started taking championships. That is not how it happened. That's not how it happened. Jordan came to the league in 84. He had some really good years, but that Chicago Bull team was not good enough to win a championship. Scottie Pippen came in 87. They were a good team, but they couldn't deal with the Lakers. They couldn't deal with the Boston Celtics. They couldn't deal with the Detroit Pistons yet. Those teams had to diminish. Players had to retire. Teams had to go down in order for them to rise. Players had to leave the league in order for them to be good enough to play in the championship. Once that happened, they were able to start getting rings. Nobody wants to talk about this stuff. This stuff I'm saying is 100% true. If it's not, call me out on it. Challenge me. Research. Do whatever you got to do. But my verdict on the GOAT is this. There is no GOAT. There's no GOAT. If there was a GOAT conversation, there would be other people in this conversation. It would not be narrowed down to LeBron James and Michael Jordan. Because for me, there's no GOAT. There isn't one. There's an asterisk next to everybody's name in this conversation. Now, the conversation is who your favorite player is, who you see as the greatest in your eyes. That is what the conversation really is. There's no official GOAT. Challenge me on this topic. Challenge anything that I said. Like what I said, the vast majority of you will dislike what I said. And I guarantee that. Leave a comment. Let me know how you feel.